Rex launched himself, his teeth finding purchase on Todd's arm. The gun clattered to the floor. In the aftermath, as Megan was led to an ambulance, Sarah found Charlie. He was leaning against his car, the adrenaline fading into exhaustion. Without a word, Sarah stepped into his space. She wrapped her arms around his waist, burying her face in his chest. Charlie held her tight, his chin resting on the top of her head. "We got her," he whispered. "You got her," she corrected, looking up at him. The distance between them vanished. In the dim light of the industrial park, Charlie leaned down and kissed her, a soft, desperate promise of a future that didn't involve crime scenes. But in Street John's, peace was always a fleeting thing. Chapter 5. The Yacht and the Spear. The romance of the previous night was pushed aside by a new horror. The best kind. A luxury yacht chartered by Toronto billionaire Jake Kaufman sat eerily silent in the harbor. The morning sun glinted off the water, but the deck was stained with something darker than seawater. Jake Kaufman was pinned to the bulkhead of his cabin like a butterfly in a collection shot through the heart with a spear gun. Difficult client, Captain Michelle Sirocco told Hudson, her eyes hard. He bullied his wife, he humiliated his partner, and he treated my crew like dirt. If you're looking for someone who hated him, start with the phone book. Hudson and Rex walked the deck. The smell of mahogany and expensive gin was stifling. The spear was coated in salt water, Sarah noted. Her equipment spread out on the polished table. It suggests the killer didn't bring it on board. They came from the water. The suspects were a gallery of the aggrieved. Andrea Kaufman, the long-suffering wife. Veronica Goodwin, the tech-savvy business partner. And Blaine, a deckhand with a criminal record who had vanished into the fog. As the investigation deepened, the motive shifted from rage to riches. Kaufman was a Luddite, but his wealth was hidden in cryptocurrency. The key, a 64-digit code, was engraved inside his gold watch. "A watch that is now missing," Hudson said, looking at the empty velvet case in Kaufman's cabin. The chase led them through the underbelly of the marina. Rex tracked the scent of the mahogany case to a basement apartment where Blaine was hiding. But Blaine wasn't the killer. He was just a thief who had seen an opportunity. "I didn't kill him," Blaine cried as Rex pinned him to the floor. "I just saw the body and the watch. I thought it was my ticket out." "Who else knew about the watch, Blaine?" Hudson demanded. "The partner," Blaine gasped. "Veronica. She told me what it was worth. She wanted me to steal it for her." Chapter 6. The Secret in the Gin. The cycle of violence continued into the rolling hills of the Devereux distillery. William Devereux, the patriarch of the island's most famous gin empire, was found drowned in a vat of his own creation. It was a poetic, brutal end for a man who had ruled his family with an iron fist. He was changing his will, Sarah discovered, looking through the medical records. He had congestive heart failure. He knew he was dying, and he wanted to make things right with his daughter, Melanie. The distillery was a place of tradition, but the air was thick with the scent of something new. A secret botanical that gave the new Devereux gin a singular, haunting note. Labrador tea. Rex's nose confirmed. Leading Hudson to a hidden stash of the botanical in the master distiller's lab. The siblings, Alan, Jaden, and Melanie, were locked in a war of inheritance. But it was Melanie, the one who had been cast out, who held the truth. "He stole my idea," she told Hudson, her voice cold. "The Labrador tea was my recipe. He mocked me for years, and then he used it to save the company." The case took a deadly turn when Simone Sawyer, a prominent spirits critic, was poisoned with a bottle of the new gin. The motive was clear: silence. In a high-stakes game of mother's ruin, Hudson and Rex tracked the poison not to the gin itself, but to the eye drops used to frame Jaden. "It was you, Melanie," Hudson said, cornering her in the distillery's aging room. "You killed your father, not because he cut you out, but because he was finally going to give you everything and you couldn't wait." Melanie's mask of innocence shattered. "He tore me down my whole life. I wasn't going to let him humiliate me one last time." As she was led away in handcuffs, the sun began to set over the distillery, casting long, golden shadows across the fields. Chapter 7. The Hit Woman in the Woods. The final act of the summer was the most perilous. Malcolm Carter, a low-level blackmailer, was executed on a wharf. The shooter was Tyler Craner, the spoiled, violent son of a local crime lord. But the police had a witness, Wyatt Donner. "He's hiking the Cape Royal Trail," Wyatt's mother told Hudson. "He's scared. He knows what he saw." But the Craners weren't going to let a witness talk. They hired Serena Rickett, a professional hit woman from the mainland, a woman who moved through the woods like a wraith. Hudson, Rex, and Jesse, the team's tech expert, headed into the wilderness. The forest was a labyrinth of ancient trees and jagged cliffs. "We have to get to him before she does," Hudson said, checking his weapon. The air in the woods was different, silent, watchful. Sarah remained at the trailhead, her heart in her throat as she monitored the radio. She knew the dangers of these woods, and she knew that Serena Rickett didn't miss. The confrontation happened at a remote campsite. Serena had already found Wyatt, posing as a detective. "Mark, get down!" Jesse shouted as the first shot rang out. The battle was a desperate scramble through the undergrowth. Hudson was hit a graze to the shoulder that bled freely. "Go, Rex!" Hudson commanded, his voice a rasp of pain. Rex took a different path, circling through the brush, silent as the fog. As Serena leveled her rifle at Hudson, Rex launched himself from the shadows. The impact was deafening. Hours later, the helicopter arrived to medevac the team and the witness. In the hospital, as Hudson's shoulder was bandaged, Sarah sat by his bed. She didn't say anything. She just held his hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm okay, Sarah," he whispered. "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "But don't you ever do that to me again." Epilogue. The view from the hill. A week later, the city was at peace. Charlie Hudson and Sarah Truong stood once again on Signal Hill. The fog had lifted, revealing the sparkling blue of the Atlantic. "What now?" Sarah asked, leaning her head on Charlie's shoulder. "Now," Charlie said, turning to look at her. "And Rex?" "And Rex?" Charlie smiled. As they looked out over the horizon, they knew that challenges would come again. There would be more shadows in the fog, more secrets in the salt. But as long as they had each other, and the best partner a man could ask for, they were ready for whatever the Atlantic chose to wash ashore. The end. Echoes in the Fog, a Hudson and Rex novel. Chapter 1. The Silent Witness. The fog in Street Johns was more than just weather. It was a living entity. It rolled off the dark Atlantic, thick and tasting of salt, swallowing the colorful houses of Jelly Bean Row and turning the world into a series of blurred shapes. For Charlie Hudson, it was the kind of morning that felt heavy, with unspoken secrets. Beside him, in the passenger seat of the unmarked SUV, Rex sat with his ears perked. The German Shepherd's nose twitched, filtering the thousands of scents the damp air carried. To anyone else, he was a K-9 officer. To Charlie, he was the partner who understood the silence between heartbeats. "Big day, pal," Charlie murmured, reaching over to scratch the dog's ears. Rex let out a soft huff of agreement. They were headed to the headquarters of Wilkins Law. What should have been a routine day had shattered into a nightmare. Megan Schaefer, a sharp-witted attorney with a promising future, had vanished, but the case was more complex than a simple disappearance. A witness had been found, or rather, a witness had been lost and found again. Emma Janssen stood on the sidewalk, her face a mask of frantic desperation. She clutched a pack of colored pencils as if they were the only things keeping her tethered to the earth. Her 12-year-old son, Brian, was missing. "He doesn't speak," Emma told Charlie, her voice trembling. "Brian, he's autistic. He communicates through his drawings. He saw something, detective. I know he did." Charlie knelt down to the boy's level when they eventually found him, huddled near a brick wall, blocks away from where Megan had last been seen. Brian was rocking back and forth, his eyes fixed on a spot in the distance that no one else could see. "Rex." "Easy," Charlie signaled. The dog didn't bark. He didn't even move fast. He approached Brian with a slow, rhythmic gait, eventually resting his chin on the boy's knee. It was a bridge, one built of fur and warmth. Slowly,